Look at these walls covered in vivid colors, strange figures, and scenes that seem to whisper secrets from another time. These are the murals of the Moche, an ancient civilization that thrived in the arid valleys of northern Peru over 1,000 years ago. Their artwork isn't just beautiful, it's a puzzle, a coded message left behind by a people who mastered art, warfare, and ritual, yet vanished without leaving a written language to explain their world. What were they trying to tell us? Who, or what, are these eerie, larger-than-life figures staring back at us across the centuries? The Moche flourished between the years 100 and 800 AD, building towering temples, intricate irrigation systems, and artworks so detailed they rival modern masterpieces. But of all their creations, their murals are the most enigmatic. These aren't just decorations, they're snapshots of a lost world, filled with gods wielding sacrificial knives, warriors locked in battle, and rituals so bizarre they defy explanation. Some scenes are so unsettling that archaeologists still argue over whether they depict mythology or chilling real-life events. And here's the thing, out of the hundreds of murals discovered, 30 in particular refuse to give up their secrets. No one knows their full meaning. No one can say for certain why they were painted or what they were meant to convey to future generations. That's where our journey begins. Over the next few minutes, we'll step into the shoes of detectives piecing together an ancient cold case. We'll examine these 30 unsolved murals one by one, uncovering the theories, the controversies, and the spine-tingling possibilities hidden in their brushstrokes. Some may reveal clues about human sacrifice. Others might hint at long-forgotten ceremonies meant to commune with the gods, and a few, they might just rewrite what we thought we knew about this mysterious civilization. So lean in close, because these walls aren't just art, they're a message, and it's time we finally listened. The first of these 30 unsolved murals stares back at us from the walls of Huaca de la Luna, a towering pyramid where the Moche performed their most sacred rituals. Here, in vivid reds and yellows, looms the terrifying figure of Owl the Decapitator God. His piercing eyes lock onto yours as he clutches a crescent-shaped toomey knife in one hand and a severed head in the other. Drops of blood swirl around him like a macabre halo, frozen in time for over 1,000 years. The details are hauntingly precise, the way the tendons in the victim's neck stretch where the blade cut clean through. The eerie calm on Owl-Peak's face, as if this act isn't just ritual but destiny. Archaeologists have long debated what this mural represents. Some believe it depicts the Moche's infamous sacrifice ceremonies, where captured warriors were led up the pyramid steps, their blood offered to the gods to ensure rain and fertile crops. Others argue the scene might be symbolic, a warning, a creation myth, or even a depiction of the gods themselves waging war in some celestial battle we can barely comprehend. But here's where the mystery deepens. Those swirling blood patterns, they don't behave like liquid should. Instead of dripping downward, they curl and spiral as if defying gravity, some forming strange shapes that resemble serpents or vines. No one has been able to explain why. Was it artistic license, a coded message about the afterlife, or something even darker like a visual record of a real supernatural event the Moche believed they witnessed? And then there's the toomey knife itself. These ceremonial blades have been found buried with Moche royalty, their edges still sharp enough to slice through flesh. But in the mural, the knife doesn't just look like a tool. It almost feels alive, its curve mirroring the crescent moon, a symbol deeply tied to Moche cosmology. Every stroke of paint seems deliberate, as if the artist wasn't just creating art, but leaving behind instructions or a warning for those who'd come after. What makes this mural stand out among the others isn't just its violence, but its intimacy. You can almost hear the whisper of the blade, the gasp of the victim, the silent approval of the gods. It's a snapshot of a moment suspended between life and death, one that raises more questions than answers. Were these sacrifices acts of devotion or desperation? Did the Moche see AI a peak as a protector or a predator? And most chilling of all, what if they weren't just depicting myths, but recording something they'd seen with their own eyes? As we move closer, the mural's cracks and faded patches remind us how much has been lost to time. Yet the Decapitator's gaze remains unwavering, as if he's waiting for someone, maybe even us, to finally understand. Just a few miles from Huaca de la Luna, another mural waits in the ruins of Huaca Cao Viejo, this one not a single terrifying figure, but an entire procession frozen in motion. Stretching across the ancient walls, a line of nearly identical figures marches forward, each carrying an object so strange that even today, no one can say for certain what it is. Some look like staffs, others resemble strange vessels or bundles, but none match any known Moche artifact. The figures themselves wear elaborate headdresses and tunics painted in shockingly vibrant hues of turquoise, scarlet, and gold, colors so fresh they seem to defy the passage of 1,200 years. What's striking isn't just their mystery, but their rhythm. Each figure moves in perfect unison, their feet lifted at the same angle, their bodies slightly tilted as if swaying to some long-forgotten ritual cadence. You can almost hear the chant that might have accompanied this procession, the drumbeat that guided their steps. But were these real priests or warriors, or something else entirely? The debate among scholars splits sharply. Some point to Moche ceramics showing similar processions during harvest festivals, suggesting this could be a snapshot of an actual ceremony. Others argue the figures' unnatural uniformity, their near-identical faces, their synchronized motion hints at something symbolic, perhaps spirits or deities marching between worlds. Then there are the objects they carry. One theory suggests their offerings bundles of coca leaves or spondylus shells, both sacred to the Moche. Another proposes their ritual tools, maybe even musical instruments lost to time. But the most haunting idea that these aren't objects at all, but severed heads wrapped in cloth. The Moche often depicted trophy heads in their art, and the way some figures cradle the bundles close to their chests echoes how warriors carried the heads of enemies. Yet without clearer details, the truth stays just out of reach. The mural's colors add another layer of intrigue. While most ancient pigments fade, these were mixed with minerals that bonded chemically with the plaster, creating hues that still glow as brightly as the day they were painted. The turquoise in particular seems almost supernatural, a color the Moche associated with the sea and the life-giving rains they desperately depended on. Was this procession part of a plea to the gods, a desperate attempt to stave off drought, or a celebration when the rains finally came? What makes this mural so compelling is its duality. It feels at once familiar and alien, a scene we can almost understand yet still slips through our fingers. Unlike the visceral horror of Ai Peak, this mystery whispers rather than shouts, drawing us deeper into the Moche mindset. Were they documenting their world or imagining another? The answer might lie in the ruins themselves. Archaeologists have found evidence of parades and offerings at Huaca Cao Viejo, but no definitive link to these painted figures. Until then, the procession keeps its secrets, marching eternally toward some unknown purpose just beyond our understanding. High on the sun-baked walls of Pañamarca, a different kind of warrior stands guard, not human, not beast, but something in between. With the fierce, unblinking eyes of an owl and the muscular bodies of seasoned fighters, these towering figures have baffled archaeologists for decades. Their hooked beaks glint as if carved from bronze, their feathered arms raised in combat stances that suggest these aren't mere decorations, they're frozen in mid-battle, ready to strike. Who or what were these owl-headed beings to the Moche? Elite soldiers wearing ritual masks, divine messengers, or something far older pulled from the shadows of Andean folklore? The details are impossible to ignore. Each warrior's plumage is meticulously painted, with individual feathers rendered in ochre and charcoal, some tipped with what looks like blood. Their talons grip weapons unlike any found in Moche excavations, curved blades that resemble crescent moons, echoing the celestial symbolism we've seen before. But it's their eyes that unsettle you the most, huge golden discs that follow you no matter where you stand, as if aware of your presence across 12 centuries. Scholars are deeply divided. Some argue these represent the Owl Society, a real warrior class who wore avian disguises to channel the bird's legendary night vision and silent hunting prowess. Ancient Andean cultures revered owls as guides between worlds, creatures who could see through darkness, traits any warrior would covet. Others point to the figure's supernatural elements, their elongated limbs, the way their feathers merge seamlessly with their skin, as proof they're depictions of gods or ancestral spirits. Then there are the patterns swirling around them, intricate grids and stepped diamonds that frame the warriors like halos. At first glance, they resemble architectural blueprints or textile designs, but their precision is mathematical, almost cryptographic. One theory suggests they're star maps marking celestial events tied to Moche warfare. Another proposes they're sound waves, a visual representation of ritual chants meant to empower the warriors. The most spine-tingling interpretation, that these patterns are shields not of physical material but of pure energy, suggesting the Moche believed in forces beyond our modern understanding. What chills the bones isn't just the mural's artistry, but its context. Pañamarca sits at the edge of the Moche world, a frontier fortress where the desert meets the mountains. Were these owl warriors painted as protectors, warding off invaders, or warnings telling outsiders not to trespass? When excavations revealed real owl bones buried beneath the mural's wall, the mystery only deepened. Ritual offering, sacred totem, the answers might lie in the shadows just out of reach. One thing's certain, these aren't static images. They pulse with intent, as if the Moche didn't just paint warriors but poured their very beliefs into the plaster. Whether myth or memory, their message lingers a whisper from the dark, waiting to be deciphered. Deep in the ruins of Huaca Cao Viejo, a mural pulses with a scene so visceral it stops you mid-breath. Here, figures kneel in a solemn circle, each gripping shallow cups as they raise them to their lips. The liquid inside isn't wine or water. It's painted in a deep, unmistakable crimson, swirling with the same eerie viscosity we saw in the Decapitator's blood. This is the so-called blood-drinking ceremony, and it sparked one of the most heated debates in Moche archaeology. Were these people actually consuming blood? Or is this mural a metaphor for something far more complex? The details are unnervingly specific. The figures' postures aren't celebratory. They're ritualistic, their backs rigid, their eyes wide and unblinking as if in trance. Some cups tilt precariously, spilling droplets that curl unnaturally in midair, just like the blood in Aya Peak's mural. But here's what chills you. Forensic archaeologists analyzing residue inside real Moche cups found traces of human blood proteins mixed with fermented corn beer. This wasn't just symbolism, it was a tangible, physical practice. The question is, why? One faction of scholars argues this was part of sacrificial rites, where warriors or priests drank the blood of enemies to absorb their strength or appease vengeful gods. Ancient texts from other cultures describe similar rituals. The Scythians, for instance, drank the blood of slain foes to claim their power, but the Moche murals complicate this theory. The drinkers here aren't triumphant warriors. Their expressions hover between dread and reverence, as if this act was sacred but terrifying. Another theory suggests the blood wasn't from enemies but from the Moche themselves. Finger bones found at the site show precise cut marks consistent with ritual bloodletting, a practice seen in Maya and Aztec cultures. Could this mural depict a covenant with the gods where participants offered their own blood to ensure fertility or rainfall? The cups' designs hint at this. Each is adorned with the face of a deity, as if the act of drinking fused the human and divine. Then there's the most controversial interpretation, that the blood isn't literal at all. The mural's crimson pigment contains ground cinnabar, a mercury-based mineral the Moche associated with transformation and the afterlife. Some researchers believe the scene represents a symbolic rebirth where initiates drank death to emerge renewed. It's a compelling idea except for those forensic findings confirming real blood was used in rituals. The truth might lie somewhere in between. Recent scans reveal layers of paint beneath the mural, showing earlier drafts where the cups held something darker, thicker. Were the artists refining a message over generations, blending reality and myth until they became indistinguishable? One thing's certain, this wasn't mere artistry. Every stroke feels deliberate, a visual incantation meant to transcend time. Whether warning, worship, or both, the mural's power hasn't faded. It still pulls us into its scarlet tide, daring us to understand. Amid the weathered walls of El Brujo complex, a figure emerges that shatters every assumption about the Moche world. A woman draped in power, her waist cinched by a belt of living serpents. This is the Snake-Belted Priestess, her gaze as unflinching as any warrior's, her presence commanding the mural's center with an authority that defies explanation. Unlike the blood-soaked rituals or owl warriors we've seen, this mural radiates something different: quiet, terrifying control. The serpents coiled around her aren't decorations, they writhe against her skin, their jaws gaping as if whispering secrets only she can hear. Who was she, a queen, a goddess, or something even rarer? A woman who wielded power in a society often depicted through the lens of male warriors and gods. The mystery begins with her isolation. In the vast catalogue of Moche art, depictions of women are scarce and none match her prominence. She stands alone, towering over smaller male attendants who kneel at her feet, their hands raised in submission or reverence. Her headdress isn't just ornate, it's a universe in miniature, layered with symbols of crops, celestial bodies, and waves, suggesting dominion over land, sky, and sea. But here's what chills you. Real tombs discovered nearby held high-status women buried with serpent-shaped scepters and belts of spondylus shells, their bodies surrounded by sacrificial offerings. Were these the priestess's descendants, or was she one of them, immortalized in pigment after death? Then there are the snakes. In most Moche art, serpents symbolize the underworld or chaotic forces, often subdued by gods. Here, they're neither tamed nor threatening their partners. Their bodies wrap around her in precise, almost mathematical spirals, their scales painted with the same care as her jewelry. Some archaeologists argue this implies shamanic power, a fusion of human and spirit realms. Others point to the venomous yellow-bellied sea snakes native to Peru's coast, creatures capable of killing with a single bite. Was her belt a warning, a weapon, or a badge of immunity? The mural's colors deepen the enigma. Her robe is a shade of purple so rare in Moche art that it's found only in one other place, the burial shrouds of royalty, dyed with millions of crushed mollusk shells. This wasn't just artistic choice, it was a statement. Whoever painted this wanted her to shimmer with otherworldly authority, a visual echo of the distant, untouchable stars. But the greatest puzzle isn't what's present, it's what's missing. If women held such power, why don't more murals show it? Was her role a fleeting exception, or was there a whole lineage of priestesses scrubbed from history? The answer might lie in the mural's cracks. Recent scans reveal traces of older paint beneath her figure, ghostly outlines of a male warrior beneath her feet. Was she painted over an existing scene, her image literally superimposing a new order onto the old? The Snake-Belted Priestess doesn't just defy expectations, she rewrites them. In a single mural, she forces us to question everything we thought we knew about gender, power, and the stories the Moche chose to preserve or erase. Her serpents hiss a challenge across the centuries. Look closer. There's more here than you've been told. On the walls of a crumbling temple near the Pacific coast, a mural pulses with a scene that feels pulled from a fever dream, human bodies twisting, half melted into the armored shells of giant crabs. Their limbs elongate into segmented claws, their mouths stretch into mandibles, their eyes bulge on stalks as if caught mid-transformation. This is the crab mural, one of the most bizarre and hotly debated images in all of Moche art. What were the artists trying to convey? A supernatural curse, a shamanic ritual, or something even more unsettling? A literal merging of human and crustacean, painted with such anatomical precision that modern marine biologists have spent decades trying and failing to identify the exact species depicted. The details defy logic. Each hybrid figure is painted mid-transition, their human skin still visible where it fuses with the crab's exoskeleton. The artist captured the exact moment tendons morph into hinge joints, the way fingertips split and harden into pincers. Even the crab's gills are rendered with scientific accuracy, flaring where human ribs should be. But here's what stumps scientists: these aren't any crabs found along Peru's coast today. The carapaces are too angular, the claws too disproportionately massive, their spines tipped with hooks resembling ancient deep-sea species extinct for millions of years. One theory ties the mural to Moche origin myths, where their ancestors emerged from the ocean after a great flood. Coastal tribes across the Andes believed crustaceans were guides between realms, their ability to shed shells symbolizing rebirth. Could this mural depict that sacred metamorphosis? Archaeologists point to excavated shaman burials adorned with crab claws, suggesting a ritual link. Others argue the figures represent a now-lost clan who wore crab armor in battle, their terrifying visages meant to unnerve enemies. Then there's the marine biology angle. The mural's crabs share traits with the Jurassic-era Megaxantho, a predator with crushing claws capable of snapping bones, but that species vanished long before humans existed. Did the Moche discover fossils and weave them into their cosmology? Or more chillingly, did they encounter something else entirely, a creature since driven to extinction or hiding in unexplored depths? What lingers isn't just the mural's strangeness, but its intimacy. Unlike the Decapitator's violence or the priestess's power, this scene feels vulnerable. The figures' expressions hover between terror and awe, as if they didn't choose this transformation but endured it. The ocean behind them isn't the tranquil Pacific we know today, but a swirling, primal force, its waves etched with shapes that resemble Dene Hellas's millennia before such science existed. Perhaps the truth lies in the tides themselves. The Moche depended on the ocean's bounty, yet feared its unpredictability. In their art, crabs often appeared during scenes of chaos, storms, eclipses, battles. Was this mural a warning, a depiction of a curse cast by angry sea gods, or a record of something far older, a memory buried so deep it surfaces only in dreams and on these cracked, salt-scarred walls? At Huaca del Sol, the largest adobe pyramid the Moche ever built, a mural stretches across what was once a sacred corridor, figures suspended midair, their limbs loose, their faces serene, as if gravity had simply stopped. These aren't fallen bodies or leaping dancers, they float with an eerie stillness, some upside down, others tilted at impossible angles, their robes drifting around them like they're submerged in invisible water. The effect is so deliberate, so meticulously painted, that it can't be dismissed as artistic error. This is intentional, but why? Start with the technical mastery. The artist didn't just sketch floating people, they manipulated perspective in ways that shouldn't exist in a civilization without formal optical science. Shadows fall upward on some figures, downward on others, creating a dissonance that makes your brain itch. The folds of their clothing ripple against unseen currents, each wrinkle painted with a precision that rivals Renaissance drapery studies. Yet, unlike European art, which sought to mimic reality, this mural seems to defy it, crafting a world where the rules of physics bend to some higher order. One prevailing theory ties these figures to shamanic rituals. Archaeologists have found traces of hallucinogenic plants like vilca and San Pedro cactus in Moche temples, substances known to induce out-of-body experiences. Could this mural depict the moment a shaman's spirit untethered from their body, soaring into realms beyond human perception? The figure's expressions support this. Their eyes are half-lidded, their mouths slightly parted, caught between ecstasy and trance. Some even hold cords that trail back to the ground, as if anchoring their souls to the physical world while their consciousness drifts elsewhere. Then there's the celestial interpretation. Huaca del Sol aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, and many floating figures cluster near painted constellations. Not the tidy Greek patterns we know, but jagged arrangements that match Peru's highland star lore. Their postures mirror the rotations of the Milky Way, their drifting limbs tracing the arc of comets. Could this be a star map disguised as art, encoding astronomical knowledge passed down through generations? The Moche tracked Venus cycles with uncanny accuracy. Why not other cosmic phenomena? But the most unsettling theory comes from the mural's hidden layers. Recent multispectral imaging revealed earlier drafts beneath the surface figures that originally had wings. These were painted over, the wings erased in favor of pure weightlessness. Was this a shift in belief, a correction based on new revelations, or something darker? In one corner, a half-finished figure dissolves into smoke, its edges blurred as if the artists themselves got lost in the act of creation. What lingers isn't just the mystery, but the visceral reaction it provokes. Stare too long, and the mural seems to move, figures gently bobbing, the walls breathing around them. Whether spiritual vision or cosmic code, one thing's clear: the Moche didn't just paint what they saw, they painted what they knew existed beyond the limits of the visible world. And in these floating forms, they left us a question that still hangs in the air, unanswered. In the dim corridors of Huaca de la Luna's inner chambers, a procession of figures moves in eerie silence, each one cradling a perfect, gleaming circle in their outstretched hands. These are the mirror bearers, their polished discs catching slivers of light that seem to flicker even after centuries buried in darkness. But here's the riddle: what exactly were they holding? Mirrors, as the name suggests, shields for some celestial battle, or objects whose true purpose has been lost to time. The discs themselves are mesmerizing. Painted with metallic pigments that still retain a ghostly sheen, they're rendered so meticulously that you can almost see reflections in them, distorted faces, swirling clouds, even hints of distant landscapes. Early Spanish accounts described Moche priests using devil's mirrors to commune with spirits, their surfaces allegedly showing visions of the future. Yet when archaeologists replicated the materials available to the Moche, polished pyrite, obsidian, even silver-copper alloys, none produced the supernatural clarity those chronicles described. The closest match was a rare mineral called specular hematite, which creates a faint, watery reflection under certain angles. But even that falls short of the otherworldly brilliance the conquistadors wrote about with such dread. Then there's the shield theory. Some scholars point to the disc's uniformity, each one identical in size, held at the same defensive angle, suggesting they might be ceremonial armor. Yet no physical shields of this design have ever been found in Moche tombs, and the figures carrying them wear no other battle gear. Their postures aren't combative, they're reverent, as if presenting offerings to something just beyond the mural's edge. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the circle's designs. Zoom in, and you'll notice each one is etched with a spiral pattern radiating from the center, a motif the Moche associated with portals between worlds. In their pottery, spirals often frame the faces of deities or the entrances to underground realms. Could these discs be literal gateways, tools for shamans to peer beyond the veil? Modern experiments show that spinning polished spirals under flickering torchlight can induce trance-like states, playing tricks on the eyes and mind. It's a tantalizing possibility that the mirrors weren't meant to reflect reality, but to distort it, bending perception until the unseen became visible. One detail chills more than the rest. In the mural's corner, a lone figure drops their disc, its surface cracking to reveal not a broken object, but a void, a pitch-black emptiness that seems to swallow the surrounding light. Was this a warning, a depiction of a ritual gone wrong, or proof that some mysteries weren't meant to be solved? The mirror bearers keep their secrets close, their circles still gleaming with a light no modern hand can replicate. The walls of Huaca Cao Viejo tremble with the sinuous coils of a creature that shouldn't exist, a serpent with two heads, each one gazing in opposite directions, its forked tongues flickering toward the heavens and the underworld simultaneously. This isn't just a snake, it's a bridge between worlds, painted in colors that still vibrate with intensity after centuries buried beneath desert sands. The sheer scale is staggering. The serpent's body stretches across multiple walls, its scales rendered with such precision that you can almost feel them rasp against each other as it moves. But here's the twist: this serpent defies nature. Its anatomy matches no known species, its head's too angular, its fangs too elongated, its eyes too human in their knowing stare. Was this a god, a prophecy, or a warning etched into the very bones of the temple? Duality pulses at the heart of Moche belief: life and death, sky and earth, order and chaos. The two-headed serpent embodies this balance, its bodies intertwined in a perfect, eternal dance. One head drips venom, its jaws parted mid-strike, the other cradles a sprouting plant in its mouth, as if nurturing life even as its counterpart delivers death. Scholars argue this could represent the Moche's understanding of cyclical destruction and renewal, the way floods wiped out crops but left fertile silt, or how sacrifice sustained the cosmic order. But the mural complicates this theory. Between the serpent's coils, tiny figures scurry, some bowed in worship, others fleeing in terror. Why would the same symbol inspire both devotion and dread? The serpent's anatomy deepens the mystery. Its scales aren't smooth like a python's, they're keeled and ridged, resembling the armored plates of an ancient ankylosaur more than any reptile alive today. Even stranger, infrared imaging revealed hidden layers beneath the paint. Earlier drafts where the serpent had three heads, later painted over. Was this a correction or a suppression? Some point to Andean myths of the Amaru, a shape-shifting serpent said to slither between dimensions. Others note the resemblance to Hindu Nagas or the double-headed dragons of Mesopotamian seals, echoes of a global serpent cult buried deep in human memory. Then there's the mural's placement. It wraps around a chamber where acoustic tests show eerie resonance. A whisper at one end amplifies into a roar at the other, as if the serpent itself carries voices between realms. Offerings found beneath the mural included seashells from distant oceans and feathers from Amazonian birds, suggesting the Moche saw this creature as a conduit between disparate worlds. But the most haunting clue: the heads don't just face opposite directions, their pupils are different shapes, one slit like a predator's, the other round like a human's. A detail too deliberate to be coincidence. Whether deity, omen, or something beyond our modern categories, the serpent's message coils tight around one truth: the Moche didn't just revere balance, they feared it. To them, harmony wasn't passive, it was a blade's edge, a tension that could snap at any moment. And this mural, it's that edge made visible, its two heads forever suspended between giving life and taking it. The walls of Huaca Cao tell a story of despair unlike any other. A lone figure crouches, wrists bound behind their back with ropes so meticulously painted you can see the individual fibers straining. But it's the prisoner's face that chills the blood, elongated beyond natural proportions, the jawline sharp as a blade, the lips parted in what could be a scream or a chant. Most unsettling of all are the markings: thick black lines radiating from the eyes like tears or rays, a pattern found nowhere else in Moche art. This isn't just a captive, this is a mystery wrapped in pigment and suffering. Every detail feels deliberate. The prisoner's torso is striped with alternating bands of red and white, a motif usually reserved for sacrificial victims in Moche ceramics. Yet the posture defies expectations instead of slumped defeat. The spine arches with tension, the neck tendons taut as if straining toward some unseen force. Even the ropes seem alive, their knots coiled like serpents around the wrists, but those facial markings, they're the key to the enigma. Archaeologists have compared them to everything from ritual tattoos to war paint, yet none match the designs worn by known Moche enemies like the Chimu or Rikway peoples. One theory suggests this isn't a human at all, but a captured deity. In Andean myth, gods sometimes took mortal form to test humans, their true identities revealed by unnatural features. The elongated face mirrors later Inca depictions of Viracocha, the weeping creator god who wandered the earth in disguise. Could the tears be divine? Infrared scans reveal something eerie beneath the paint. Earlier sketches where the prisoner's mouth was sewn shut with thread-like lines, later painted over. Was this figure meant to be silenced, or were the artists themselves hiding something? Then there's the forensic angle. Skeletons found at Huaca Cao show signs of deliberate cranial deformation, a practice used to distinguish nobility in some ancient cultures. Yet this prisoner's elongation is too extreme, the proportions closer to a jaguar's skull than a human's. Jaguars symbolized shamanic power across the Americas. Was this mural showing the moment a shapeshifter was trapped mid-transformation? The ropes support this. Real Moche cords discovered nearby were woven with jaguar hair, believed to bind supernatural beings. What lingers isn't just the image, but its isolation. Unlike sacrificial scenes swarming with priests and spectators, this mural shows no captors, no audience, just emptiness pressing in on the bound figure. The longer you stare, the more the markings seem to pulse, the prisoner's gaze locking onto yours across the centuries. Whether god, monster, or something in between, one thing's clear: this wasn't just a record of captivity. It was a warning about the price of crossing boundaries no one was meant to cross. Towering over the worshippers at its feet, a spider the size of a man looms from the walls of Huaca de la Cruz, its 8 legs splayed like rays of some dark sun, its abdomen striped in colors no earthly arachnid possesses. But the true enigma lies in its web, a geometric nightmare of perfect rhombuses and zigzagging lines that defy the spiral patterns found in nature. This is the spider divinity, a being revered and feared in equal measure, its mural pulsing with questions. Why would the Moche, master observers of the natural world, depict a spider's web so unnaturally, and what power did they believe this creature held? Drenched in symbolism, the spider's form merges the real and the surreal. Its body is segmented like armor, each plate etched with symbols resembling raindrops, a nod to Andean folklore linking spiders to storms. Local myths still whisper that when a spider climbs its web, rain follows. For the Moche, whose survival hinged on unpredictable desert rains, this creature may have been a living prayer for water. Excavations beneath the mural revealed offerings of spondylus shells, sacred objects associated with fertility and rain rituals. Yet the spider's eyes tell a darker tale. They're humanoid, with pupils shaped like crescent moons, echoing the Decapitator God's blade. Was this divinity also a harbinger of violence? The web's unnatural geometry deepens the mystery. Instead of concentric circles, it's a labyrinth of sharp angles, resembling the stepped patterns of Moche temples. Some researchers suggest it's a map not of physical space, but of the cosmos, with the spider positioned at the center like a celestial weaver. Others argue the design mimics the vibrational signals certain spiders use to communicate, transformed into a visual code. The most chilling theory, that the web isn't a web at all, but a net meant to ensnare souls. Warriors captured in battle were sometimes draped in spiderweb like shrouds before sacrifice, their bodies left to mummify in the arid air. Then there's the posture of the worshippers. Unlike other murals where figures kneel in uniformity, these seem frozen mid-movement, some reaching toward the spider, others recoiling, as if torn between reverence and terror. Their hands are painted with extraordinary detail, veins bulging with tension, fingertips stained red where they brush the web's threads. Forensic analysis of the pigment revealed traces of hematite, a mineral linked to blood rituals. Were these threads meant to symbolize bonds, literal or spiritual, between humans and the divine? The spider's legs offer one final clue. Each one ends not in a claw but in a human hand, fingers outstretched as if to grasp or bless. It's a motif found in Moche metalwork where spider gods clutch daggers or cups, blurring the line between creature and deity. Perhaps the answer lies in that duality, not just a bringer of rain or war, but a bridge between the mundane and the miraculous. The Moche didn't just worship nature, they reshaped it in their art, crafting a world where even spiders could rewrite the rules of existence. Looming from the shadows of Huaca Cao, a spectral army of hands drifts across the wall, palms upturned, fingers splayed, some clenched into fists, others frozen mid-gesture as if caught in conversation. These aren't attached to arms or bodies, they float in isolation, their edges blurred like smoke. But what chills the blood isn't just their disembodiment, it's the forensic revelation that these hands weren't imagined. Analysis of their proportions, knuckle structures, and even the subtle scars etched into the paint prove they were copied from real people. At least 47 different individuals left their mark here. Why were they artists, worshippers, or something far more unsettling? The hands vary startlingly in detail. Some are rough and calloused, their nails chipped, likely laborers or warriors. Others are delicate, adorned with painted bracelets or rings denoting status. A few bear unmistakable deformities, a missing fingertip, a twisted pinky, even what looks like a battle wound slicing across the palm. This wasn't generic symbolism, it was a census in pigment, a gathering of distinct identities suspended in time. One prevailing theory suggests their votive offerings, a ritual where worshippers pressed their hands against the wall before priests traced their outlines as a pact with the gods. Similar practices appear in cave art from Indonesia to Patagonia, but never with this level of individualized precision. Then there's the artistry angle. Moche ceramics often bore the fingerprints of their creators pressed into the clay before firing. Could this mural be a grand-scale version of that tradition, a collective signature of the artists who painted the temple? Infrared scans reveal something haunting. Beneath the top layer, earlier hands were painted over, their outlines still faintly visible. Like a palimpsest of the forgotten, each generation leaving their mark only to be replaced by the next. But the most spine-tingling theory connects these hands to Moche afterlife beliefs. Excavations at the site uncovered a burial pit filled with actual severed hands, their bones arranged in the same gestural patterns as the mural. DNA tests confirmed they came from dozens of individuals, their deaths spaced years apart. Were these trophies from battles, sacrifices to appease the gods? Or more disturbingly, were the mural's hands painted post-mortem, a way to bind the dead to the temple forever? The mural's composition fuels the mystery. The hands don't randomly drift, they cluster in groups, some reaching toward a central point where the plaster is scorched, as if something once hung there too volatile to be depicted. A relic, an idol, or simply a void the Moche dared not name. One thing certain, these weren't just decorations. They were a bridge between worlds, a chorus of voices murmuring across centuries, their message just beyond our grasp. Beneath the ruined arches of Huaca de la Estrella, a parade of figures moves with unsettling grace, their limbs tapering into 5-pointed appendages, their skin patterned with the rough, knobby texture of a creature that belongs to the sea, not the desert. These are the starfish beings, their forms caught somewhere between human and echinoderm, marching in a silent procession that twists the rules of biology and belief. The mural's colors haven't faded. The deep oranges and muted blues of their starfish limbs pulse against the clay, as if the artists mixed pigments with seawater itself. But here's the riddle that's baffled marine biologists and archaeologists alike. The starfish depicted here don't match any species known to science, past or present. Their anatomy is precise yet impossible. Each figure's arms branch into 5 distinct points, but unlike real starfish, these taper into elongated fingers, the tips subtly jointed as if capable of grasping. The central discs where a starfish's mouth would be are replaced with humanoid faces, their expressions serene, almost trance-like. Even the texture is wrong. Real starfish skin is covered in tiny tube feet, but these figures boast raised patterns resembling the step terraces of Moche temples. So what are we looking at? Hybrid deities, shapeshifters frozen mid-transformation, or evidence of a now extinct species the Moche alone documented? One faction of scholars insists this mural ties to coastal ecology. The Moche depended on the Pacific's bounty, and starfish frequently appear in their pottery as symbols of regeneration, their ability to regrow limbs echoing cycles of death and rebirth. Excavations at nearby sites revealed starfish ossicles, those tiny skeletal plates buried in ritual caches, often arranged in celestial patterns, but the mural's starfish defy this explanation. Their proportions are skewed, their colors unnaturally vibrant. The marching posture, arms undulating in unison, mimics the motion of certain sea stars, yet no species moves with such coordinated rhythm. Then there's the celestial argument. The procession arcs across the wall in a curve that mirrors the path of Venus across the night sky, a planet the Moche tracked meticulously. 5 pointed stars feature prominently in their cosmology, and the mural's figures are spaced at intervals matching lunar cycles. Could these be star gods, their forms blending human and astral imagery? Infrared scans reveal hidden layers where the starfish limbs originally bore tiny, painted constellations later covered, as if the artists changed their minds about how literal the connection should be. But the most haunting detail remains the starfish themselves. Modern databases of marine life contain nothing like them. Their closest relatives might be the deep-sea brisingida, which dangle their arms to catch prey, yet those lack the mural's vivid hues and humanoid traits. Paleontologists have floated a radical theory. Could the Moche have encountered a species that thrived during ancient El Niño events, when warmer waters triggered bizarre marine mutations? Or did they glimpse something even older, a creature from the Miocene epoch, its fossilized remains whispering to them through stone? The procession's purpose is just as enigmatic. Unlike other murals teeming with priests or warriors, these figures move alone, their path leading toward a section of wall that's collapsed into dust. Were they heading to a celestial gate, a sacrificial altar, or were they simply meant to walk forever, caught between the tides of earth and sky? The answer might lie in their silence. No weapons, no offerings, just the quiet certainty of beings who know they belong to 2 worlds at once. In the dim corridors of Huaca del Pueblo, row upon row of golden faces stare back with hollow eyes, each mask identical, each expression frozen in the same unsettling serenity. These are the Golden Mask murals, a gallery of anonymous nobility painted with such precision that you can trace every hammered line, every stylized curl of the forehead ornaments. Yet here's the paradox that's haunted archaeologists for decades. Not a single physical mask matching these depictions has ever been found. Not in tombs, not in temple caches, not even as fragments. How could the Moche render these objects with such obsessive accuracy, yet leave no trace of their existence beyond paint and plaster? The masks themselves are masterpieces of symbolic language. Cast in a golden hue that still glows against the terracotta walls, they share uncanny uniformity: high cheekbones, elongated chins, slitted eyes that seem to follow you like the Owl Warriors we saw earlier. But what chills the blood is their sameness. Unlike other Moche art, where individuality thrives in the quirks of a warrior's scar or a priestess's jewelry, these masks are clones, as if mass-produced by some ancient assembly line. Forensic analysis of the brushstrokes reveals something even stranger. The same artist didn't paint them. Multiple hands worked on these murals across generations, yet each adhered to the exact template, deviating by less than a millimeter in proportions. This wasn't just art, it was dogma. One theory suggests the masks were never physical objects at all. The Moche revered gold as the sweat of the sun, a metal so sacred it was reserved for the gods and their earthly intermediaries. Perhaps these murals depict a moment of transformation when living rulers or priests donned not literal masks, but a metaphysical golden visage through ritual. Early Spanish chronicles describe Inca rulers dusting their faces with gold powder before sacred ceremonies, a practice possibly inherited from earlier cultures. Could the Moche have taken this further, using hallucinogens or trance states to become the masks we see here? Excavations at Huaca del Pueblo uncovered lumps of raw gold in a hidden chamber, some bearing teeth marks, as if initiates bit into the metal to absorb its power. Then there's the military angle. The only deviation in the masks appears in their headdresses, some spiked like rays, others fringed with what might represent feathers or flames. These match descriptions of Moche battle standards described in later Chimu legends, where golden totems were carried into war to blind enemies with the sun's gaze. But if these were battle masks, why paint them in sacred spaces rather than armories? And why the emphasis on anonymity? The answer might lie in the mural's arrangement. Each mask faces a central point where the wall has crumbled away, their hollow eyes fixed on something or someone we can no longer see. The most tantalizing clue comes from chemistry. The gold pigment isn't metallic at all, but a blend of ochre and ground pyrite that creates an optical illusion of luster under torchlight. Under ultraviolet scans, hidden symbols flicker across the mask surfaces, tiny handprints, crescent moons, even what look like genealogical markings. This suggests the masks weren't mere decorations, but layered with meaning, each stroke a hidden language. Perhaps the masks existed only in this liminal space between pigment and prayer, meant to be worn not by the living, but by the gods themselves when they walked among mortals. What lingers isn't just the mystery of their absence, but their eerie familiarity. Stare too long, and the masks begin to feel less like artifacts and more like mirrors reflecting not the faces of the past, but our own obsession with the identities they hid. The Moche understood what every mask wearer knows. Sometimes the truest power lies not in being seen, but in being unrecognizable. High on the sun-baked walls of Huaca Pintada, a battalion of warriors stands frozen not in triumph but in sorrow, their armored shoulders slumped, their helmets tipped forward, rivers of iridescent blue tears streaming down their battle-scarred cheeks. This is the Weeping Warriors mural, one of the most emotionally raw scenes in all of Moche art. Unlike the stoic fighters brandishing weapons elsewhere, these figures radiate exhaustion, their fingers slack around spears still slick with painted blood. But the true mystery lies in their tears, not the transparent droplets seen in other Moche depictions of grief, but thick, cobalt blue streams that glimmer like liquid lapis lazuli under torchlight. What could make hardened soldiers weep, and why this unnatural hue? The warriors' postures tell a story of aftermath, not action. Some kneel beside fallen comrades, their hands pressed to the dead men's chests in a gesture eerily similar to modern CPR. Others clutch their own wounds, their faces contorted in pain rather than the trance-like serenity of sacrificial victims. The most haunting figure sits apart, cradling a child's tiny sandal, a detail that shatters any assumption this was mere ceremonial theater. Archaeologists found real sandals buried nearby, their stitches still intact, suggesting this mural memorialized a specific, devastating event. But was it a lost battle? A plague, or something even the Moche feared to name? Then there's the enigma of the blue tears. Analysis of the pigment revealed ground sodalite, a stone so rare the Moche would have traded across continents to obtain it. In other ancient cultures, blue symbolized divinity. The Egyptians used lapis for godly skin. The Maya painted sacrificial victims with azure before throwing them into cenotes. But the Moche reserved blue almost exclusively for water motifs, combined with the mural's backdrop, a parched landscape where rivers run dry. Some scholars believe these warriors weep not just blood or sorrow, but the very essence of life itself. Their tears might represent the ultimate sacrifice, warriors mourning the land's infertility, their bodies becoming vessels for the water their people lacked. Yet the mural subverts expectations in its intimacy. One warrior wipes another's cheek, his gesture tender amidst the carnage. Another presses his forehead to his enemies, their helmets touching like a grotesque parody of a kiss. This isn't the stylized violence of other Moche battle scenes. It's visceral, personal, aching with a humanity that transcends time. Forensic archaeologists discovered something chilling in the plaster, fingerprints preserved in the pigment, some so small they might belong to children. Were the artists survivors of whatever catastrophe inspired this? Or was this mural itself a collective act of mourning, each grieving hand leaving its mark? The weeping warriors refused to fit neatly into categories of victory or defeat. Their blue tears shimmer with questions. Did the Moche believe sorrow could be alchemized into something sacred? Or were they showing us the cost of survival, that even the fiercest fighters must bend beneath the weight of loss? The answers may lie in the mural's quietest detail, a single drop of blue suspended mid-fall, forever caught between the warrior's skin and the thirsty earth below. At Huaca de la Estrella, a lone ladder stretches impossibly upward, its rungs floating in midair, unsupported by any visible structure, while figures clamber skyward with desperate determination. This is the ladder to nowhere, a mural that defies logic at every turn. The ladder itself is a paradox. Its wooden beams are rendered with the same meticulous detail as real Moche ladders found in archaeological sites, yet its proportions are all wrong. Each rung stands twice as high as a human could reasonably climb, forcing the figures into awkward, almost painful contortions as they hoist themselves up. Some grip the rails with white-knuckled intensity, their muscles straining under the effort. Others seem to glide effortlessly, their limbs elongated like shadows at dusk. Why depict a simple object like a ladder with such unnatural precision? And where or what were these climbers trying to reach? One faction of scholars insists this is purely symbolic, a metaphor for spiritual ascent. The Moche built their world around layers of existence, the underworld, the earthly plane, and the celestial realm where gods dwelled. The ladder's impossible height might represent the grueling journey between these worlds, its rungs serving as trials or initiations. Supporting this, the climbers wear distinct garments. Those at the bottom are draped in coarse, earth-toned fabrics, while figures higher up shimmer in metallic pigments resembling gold. Could this mural depict a literal hierarchy of souls, their purity refining as they ascended? Excavations beneath the mural uncovered tiny clay ladders in child graves, miniature versions perhaps meant to guide the dead skyward. But the engineers among archaeologists raise an eyebrow. Actual Moche ladders were pragmatic, sturdy things wide enough for two people to pass, lashed together with braided fibers. This mural's ladder is too narrow, its rungs spaced too far apart to be functional. More puzzling still, the top vanishes into a swirling vortex of geometric patterns unlike any Moche architectural motif. Some argue this vortex mirrors the spiral galaxies visible from Peru's high deserts, suggesting the ladder was a cosmic bridge. Others note its resemblance to whirlpools in Moche pottery, symbols of the watery void between worlds. The climbers themselves deepen the mystery. Infrared scans reveal earlier sketches beneath the paint figures who originally descended the ladder rather than climbed it. Why the change? One theory points to a catastrophic El Niño event in the 6th century that flooded Moche lands. Could this mural have been repurposed from a harvest celebration where ladders carried bounty from terraced fields into a plea for salvation? The climbers' expressions support this. Lower figures grimace under invisible weight, while those nearing the top gaze outward with hollow eyes as if witnessing something beyond human comprehension. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the ladder's material. The rails aren't painted as wood, their grain resembles bone, their color the pallor of bleached ribs. In Moche mythology, the first humans emerged from the bones of their creators. Was this ladder a spine, its climbers retracing the steps of creation itself? The answer might linger in the mural's silent tension between earth and sky, struggle and transcendence, the known and the unknowable. One thing's certain, the Moche didn't build ladders to nowhere. They built them to everywhere we've forgotten how to see. At Huaca Cao Viejo, the walls shiver with motion, figures locked in an eternal dance, their limbs liquid with movement, their garments swirling around them like smoke. But when you lean closer, your blood runs cold. Where their faces should be, there's only smooth, blank flesh, no eyes, no mouths, no hint of identity. These are the faceless dancers, and their silence screams louder than any painted expression ever could. The dancers' bodies tell a story their missing faces cannot. Their proportions are exaggerated, torsos elongated, fingers tapered into impossible slenderness, knees bent at angles human joints couldn't sustain. Some scholars argue this represents motion blur, the artists capturing speed by stretching form. Yet other Moche murals depict movement through flowing garments or airborne postures without distorting anatomy. These bodies feel less like stylized art and more like something else. Infrared imaging reveals a chilling detail. Beneath the top layer of paint, faint charcoal sketches show the dancers originally had faces, wide, screaming mouths and hollow eyes before being deliberately erased. Why was this censorship? A change in belief, or were the faces removed because they saw something that couldn't be shown? Then there's the question of what they're dancing toward. Unlike ritual processions where figures move in unison, these dancers spiral chaotically, limbs intersecting at jagged angles. The backdrop offers no clues, just an empty void, not the temple plazas or battlefields typical of Moche murals. Forensic archaeologists found something bizarre in the plaster, microscopic traces of a psychedelic compound called bufotenin secreted by desert toads. Was this mural painted under hallucinogenic influence, the dancer's facelessness reflecting visions of beings without fixed form? Or were they meant to be viewed in an altered state, their true faces appearing only to those who'd consumed the sacred brew? The most haunting theory comes from Andean oral traditions. Elders whisper of the Cholachacwi, shape-shifting spirits who mimic human forms but lack faces, their true identities hidden beneath hats or hoods. To see a Cholachacwi's blank visage was to invite madness or death. Could these dancers be Moche encounters with such beings? The mural's location supports this. Huaca Cao Viejo straddles a convergence of ancient ley lines, spots still avoided by locals who speak of zones where the world wears thin. But perhaps the answer lies in the dancers themselves. Their hands are hyper-detailed, each crease and scar painted with obsessive precision, as if the artists wanted us to know these were real people, even as they erased everything else about them. Were they depicting a ritual where masks weren't worn, but identities were shed, or memorializing victims of some catastrophe so traumatic their features couldn't be shown for fear of summoning the past? The longer you stare, the more the blank spaces seem to shift, not empty at all, but filled with everything we're not meant to see. Amidst the desert sands of Huaca del Jaguar, a figure crouches with the lethal grace of a predator. His human shoulders draped in a pelt so vividly painted, you can almost hear the rustle of tawny fur. This is the jaguar priest, his hands gripping a ceremonial cup in one fist and a curved blade in the other, his face obscured by the beast's hollow-eyed skull. But here's what stops archaeologists mid-breath. Jaguars never roamed the Moche's coastal deserts. Their natural habitat lies hundreds of miles away in the Amazon's tangled depths. So why does this single mural break the rules, showcasing an animal the artists might never have seen with their own eyes? The priest's posture pulses with contradiction. Unlike the rigid formality of other ritual scenes, he's caught mid-motion, one knee pressed to the ground, the other poised to spring, as if caught between human prayer and animal instinct. The pelt isn't just worn, it's alive, its edges blending seamlessly into his skin where the artist blurred the lines between man and beast. His fingers elongate into claws, but only on one hand the other remains human, a duality that defies simple symbolism. Some scholars argue this represents a shamanic metamorphosis, where the priest channeled the jaguar's spirit during rituals. Excavations at the site turned up bundles of coca leaves and snuffing tubes stained with dimethyltryptamine, a potent hallucinogen used by Amazonian tribes to become their animal guides. Could the mural depict a vision rather than reality? Then there's the geographic enigma. Jaguars appear nowhere else in Moche art, not in ceramics, textiles, or burial offerings. Yet the mural's rendering is anatomically precise. The rosettes on the pelt mimic the exact patterning of Panthera onca, the Amazonian jaguar, not the smaller, spotless mountain lions native to the Andes. This specificity suggests the artist worked from first-hand knowledge. How trade routes between the coast and Amazon existed, with spondylus shells exchanged for feathers and medicinal plants. But jaguar pelts, they'd be impossibly rare, reserved for rulers or high priests. A recent discovery complicates things further. Deep in the temple's foundations, archaeologists found a child's burial wrapped in a pelt genetically matched to an Ecuadorian jaguar subspecies extinct for over 1,000 years. Was this pelt an heirloom, a war trophy, or proof of a journey, literal or spiritual, into lands the Moche feared as much as they revered? The mural's context deepens the mystery. Behind the priest looms a stepped pyramid, its tiers painted with waves and strange hook-shaped symbols. These match petroglyphs found near Amazonian waterfalls, sites still considered portals to the spirit world by indigenous shamans. Is the mural a map of sorts, charting a path between realms? The priest's cup offers a clue. Its contents aren't blood or chicha beer, but a swirling black void, the same pigment used to paint the night sky. Jaguars in Amazonian cosmology are lords of the underworld, able to traverse darkness with their glowing eyes. Perhaps the priest isn't just wearing a pelt, but staring into the abyss it represents. What chills the bones is the mural's isolation. Unlike the recurring Decapitator or Owl Warriors, this figure stands alone, unconnected to any known myth cycle. His blade isn't raised in sacrifice, it's turned inward, hovering near his own ribs. A final detail seals the enigma. Infrared scans reveal the priest's face was originally painted with jaguar-like whiskers, later scrubbed away by an unknown hand. Whether to conceal a secret or protect the uninitiated from its power, we may never know. But one thing's certain, this isn't just a man wearing a borrowed skin. It's a warning, or an invitation to step into the shadows where the lines between human and beast, desert and jungle, memory and dream dissolve into silence. The walls of Huaca de los Sacrificios bleed not with the crimson of human offerings, but with thick, obsidian black rivers snaking between temple facades, their currents heavy and deliberate as they carve paths through sacred ground. This is the Blood Rivers mural, a haunting masterpiece where liquid doesn't obey the laws of nature. The rivers don't flow downward, they climb, twist, and even pool upside down along archways, as if gravity itself bowed to some unseen force. The craftsmanship is undeniable, each droplet, each ripple textured with a precision that suggests the artists witnessed this phenomenon firsthand. But what chilled archaeologists wasn't the surreal hydraulics, it was the pigment itself. Not red, not brown, but a shimmering black deeper than any known Moche paint, laced with minerals that still defy modern analysis. Start with the engineering angle. The Moche were masters of water management, channeling desert floods through intricate acequias to feed their crops. Some scholars argue this mural depicts an advanced hydraulic system, perhaps a spiritual blueprint for controlling the lifeblood of their civilization. The rivers connect temples in a network mirroring actual irrigation canals found nearby. Yet the liquid's behavior contradicts physics. One section shows it defying a 90-degree turn without spilling, clinging to the wall like syrup. Another reveals tendrils branching mid-air, splitting into fractal patterns resembling veins. If this was mere symbolism, why the obsessive attention to hydraulic realism in every other detail? Then there's the sacrifice theory. Excavations beneath the mural uncovered a stone drainage channel stained with hemoglobin, its path eerily similar to the painted rivers. The Moche famously directed sacrificial blood down temple steps into ceremonial conduits, a practice echoed in Aztec rituals. But why paint the blood black? Chemical tests on the mural's pigment detected traces of magnetite, a mineral with magnetic properties, and oxidized pyrite, which transforms into sulfuric acid when exposed to moisture. This suggests the blood might represent something far older. Petroleum seepage from natural asphalt deposits the Moche used for torches and mummification. Could they have interpreted this sticky, flammable substance as the Earth's own life force? The most unsettling discovery came from infrared scans. Beneath the black rivers, earlier drafts pulsed with a color no Moche artist should have possessed, a vibrant violet. The only natural source of this hue in ancient Peru was a rare mollusk harvested at depths requiring diving gear, a technology the Moche allegedly lacked. Even stranger, the violet layers fluoresce under UV light, reacting as if the pigments were alive. Some researchers speculate the mural was repainted after a catastrophic event, perhaps a volcanic eruption that darkened the skies with ash, turning rivers into ink. Others whisper of ritual hallucinogens like the black drink of Mesoamerica, brewed to induce visions of otherworldly landscapes. What lingers isn't just the mural's strangeness, but its intimacy. Unlike the Decapitator's theatrical violence, this scene feels clandestine, a secret whispered between the earth and its keepers. The rivers don't just flow, they watch, their currents forming shapes that resolve momentarily into eyes. Whether map, memory, or warning, one truth remains: the Moche didn't just depict water, they captured its shadow. Pressed into the weathered adobe of Huaca del Gigante, a single handprint looms larger than life, its fingers splayed wide, its palm deep enough to cast shadows even under the midday sun. This isn't just any mark, it's the giant's handprint, a solitary impression stretching nearly twice the size of a grown man's hand. Its edges crisp as if the maker pressed into wet plaster only yesterday. But the sheer scale isn't what unsettles archaeologists, it's the unanswered question burning at the heart of this mystery. Whose hand could have left it and why? Forensic analysis only deepens the enigma. The print's proportions are uncannily human: 5 fingers, a rounded heel, even the subtle arch of a lifeline, yet its dimensions defy biology. The distance from wrist to fingertip measures over 14 inches, a length seen only in rare medical conditions like gigantism. But here's the catch: no skeletal remains matching that size have ever been found in Moche territory. The print's depth suggests immense pressure, as if someone or something pushed with deliberate, almost supernatural force. Yet the surrounding plaster shows no cracks, no stress fractures, as though the wall yielded effortlessly to this impossible touch. Theories spiral in every direction. Some scholars argue it's a ritual stamp, a sacred signature left by priests channeling the power of a giant deity. Aya Peak, the Decapitator God, was often depicted with exaggerated limbs. Could this be his literal mark, pressed into the temple as a blessing or a warning? Others propose it's an artistic magnification, a symbolic gesture like the oversized hands on Colombia's El Homba Cayman, representing strength or divine authority. But the Moche rarely worked in abstract scales. Their art thrived on precision, from the veins in a warrior's wrist to the individual feathers on an owl's wing. Why break realism here? Then there's the practical camp. Could this be a mold, a plaster cast taken from a carved wooden model and enlarged for dramatic effect? Experiments with Moche-era materials show it's possible, but why go through the effort for a single, isolated print? The mural's location fuels speculation. It stands alone in a narrow corridor where sound amplifies unnaturally. A whisper at one end becomes a roar at the other. Was this a sonic marker, a hand pressed to the earth to listen for divine messages? Indigenous traditions across the Andes speak of giants who shaped the land before vanishing. Local lore still warns of the Huaca Machu, ancient ones who left their imprints in stone as reminders of their reign. The most haunting detail isn't the hand itself, but what's missing around it. No other prints, no smudges from a second attempt, just this one perfect impression suspended in time. Infrared scans reveal something even stranger. Beneath the surface, the plaster is layered with crushed seashells and hematite, materials used in Moche burials to guide souls to the afterlife. Was this wall more than a canvas? Was it a threshold, a door sealed by a touch from the other side? The giant's handprint doesn't just defy explanation, it defies categorization. Not quite art, not quite artifact, it lingers in the liminal space between myth and memory. Whether god, giant, or something else entirely, its message is clear. Some truths aren't meant to be held in human hands. At the remote site of Huaca de la Luna's eastern chamber, a celestial anomaly stares down from the plaster, a plump, long-eared rabbit poised delicately on the face of a crescent moon, its paws cradling an orb that glows with an otherworldly silver sheen. This is the moon rabbit mural, a scene so unexpected it stopped archaeologists mid-excavation. Rabbits aren't native to Peru's desert coast, nor do they feature anywhere else in Moche art. Even stranger, the motif mirrors Asian legends word for word, from China's jade rabbit pounding the elixir of immortality to Japan's tsuki, no Yuzogi needing mochi on the lunar surface. How did this symbol, thousands of miles and an ocean away from its cultural roots, end up hidden in a pre-Columbian temple? The rabbit's rendering is anything but casual. Its fur is painted in delicate gradations of gray, each stroke suggesting movement, as if the creature might hop off the wall at any moment. The moon itself isn't the flat disk seen in other Moche celestial art. It's a three-dimensional sphere, shaded with techniques that wouldn't become common in Europe until the Renaissance. Most jarring is the rabbit's posture, seated upright like a human, one paw raised as if caught mid-gesture. This isn't a hunted animal or a decorative flourish, it's a deity, or at the very least, a revered intermediary between worlds. The theories explode from there. One faction insists this proves trans-Pacific contact long before Europeans arrived. Ancient Chinese texts mention voyages to a land of Fusang, possibly the Americas, while genetic studies show pre-Columbian chicken bones in Chile with Polynesian DNA markers. Could a shipwrecked sailor or traded artifact have carried the rabbit myth across the ocean? Others point to a darker possibility: human sacrifice victims from distant regions brought to Moche lands, their stories surviving in fragmented whispers. Excavations at the site uncovered the skeleton of a young woman with epicanthic eye folds, her bones arranged in a way that suggests she wasn't local. Was she the keeper of this story? Then there's the cosmic coincidence argument. Rabbits are prolific breeders, their cycles syncing neatly with lunar phases, a connection multiple cultures might have noted independently. The Moche tracked the moon meticulously, using its cycles to time planting and warfare. Their moon god sea often appeared with a decapitator's blade, a far cry from this gentle lunar gardener. Infrared scans reveal an earlier draft beneath the mural, a more traditional Moche crescent knife, later painted over with the rabbit. Was this a cultural shift, a foreign influence seeping into the priesthood? The mural's isolation screams intentionality. No other celestial scenes at Huaca de la Luna feature animals, let alone borrowed myths. The rabbit occupies a niche above what was once an altar, its position aligning with the moon's southernmost rise during the winter solstice. Recent excavations beneath the floor turned up a cache of lapis lazuli beads, a stone found only in Afghanistan. and tiny silver figurines of rabbits, their craftsmanship unlike anything else in the Moche world. Whether messenger, accident, or miracle, the moon rabbit lingers as archaeology's most beguiling riddle. Its very existence forces us to reconsider not just the Moche, but the threads that might have woven ancient civilizations together long before history books began recording their names. And as the moon's glow still catches its painted fur each solstice, the rabbit seems to whisper, some connections defy maps, borders, and time itself. Amid the ruins of Huaca Cao, two figures stand fused at the chest, a single being with two heads, 4 arms, and legs that split unnaturally below the knees. This is the Siamese twins' deity, their bodies painted in contrasting shades of burnt umber and ghostly pallor, each clutching objects that couldn't be more opposed. A golden corn stalk bursting with ripe kernels in one pair of hands, a flint knife crusted in dried blood in the other. The mural's precision is staggering, every vein, every knuckle rendered with clinical accuracy, yet the physiology defies nature. The shared torso isn't just conjoined, it's seamless, the ribs merging into a singular cage that shouldn't be able to house 2 sets of organs. Were the Moche depicting real twins worshipped as gods, or sculpting the ultimate metaphor for a civilization built on contradictions? Start with the anatomical enigma. Modern teratology, the study of congenital anomalies, confirms true symmetrical conjoined twins share a midline structure, but the mural's figures break every rule. Their spine bifurcates too low, their pelvis forms an impossible wishbone shape, and their hands interlock in a way that would require dislocated joints. This wasn't artistic ignorance. Moche healers trep and skulls with surgical precision and depicted battlefield wounds realistically. The distortions feel intentional, as if the twins' very bodies were designed to unsettle. Infrared scans reveal an earlier version where the figures were separate, later painted over to fuse them. Why erase individuality to create this monstrosity? The objects they carry ignite fiercer debate. Corn and blood, the twin pillars of Moche survival. The stalk bends toward the lighter twin's face, its kernels painted with a luminous glow that still catches the dawn light through the temple's eastern window. The knife, however, drips blackened gore in the darker twin's grip, its edge notched from use. Archaeologists found real counterparts buried nearby, a ceremonial Toomey knife with dried hemoglobin in its crevices, and a copper mace cob so polished it must have been handled for generations. Were these the twins' actual relics, or did the mural inspire their creation? Some scholars insist this depicts the IR twins from Andean creation myths, brothers who sacrificed one another to birth the world. Others point to excavated graves of conjoined infants, their tiny skeletons adorned with gold foil and spondylus shells, suggesting real twins might have been deified. But the mural's context complicates this. The twins loom over a scene of harvest and slaughter, farmers reaping quinoa while prisoners are marched up temple steps. Their conjoined form straddles the dividing line, literally bridging the two worlds. The most unsettling detail lies in their faces. Though identical in structure, their expressions warp opposites, one serene, lips parted in song, the other snarling with bared teeth. Yet their eyes are identical, hollow pits reflecting no light, as if the same void stares out from both. It's a duality that claws at the modern mind, not just life and death, but the terrifying possibility that they're inseparable. The Moche understood what we often forget, that nourishment requires sacrifice, that growth demands violence. The twins aren't just symbols, they're a mirror, forcing us to confront what we've fused together to survive. Deep inside the shadowed recesses of Huaca del Misterio, something extraordinary happens when the first rays of dawn strike the walls. Figures fade into view like apparitions materializing from thin air, their colors shifting from near invisible to vibrant in a matter of seconds. These are the vanishing murals, their pigments engineered to respond to light in ways modern chemistry still can't fully explain. Unlike typical frescoes that weather or fade, These scenes remain hidden until the angle of the sun hits a precise threshold, revealing warriors mid-battle, priests in trance, even celestial maps that flicker like mirages before disappearing again when the light shifts. The technical mastery is staggering. Analysis shows the pigments contain microscopic layers of minerals, ground mica, hematite, and a yet unidentified crystalline compound that refracts light like a prism. Under magnification, the particles align in lattice-like structures, bending wavelengths to control visibility. But here's what stumps scientists: the Moche lack the tools to grind materials to such precision. Replication attempts using period-appropriate technology produce crude, dull powders, nothing close to the mural's photochromic brilliance, even more perplexing. The effect isn't consistent. Some murals vanish under moonlight, others under noon sun, suggesting each was calibrated for specific rituals or astronomical events. One theory points to accidental alchemy. The Moche's coastal temples sit atop veins of rare minerals washed down from the Andes. Could mixing local clays with briny groundwater or volcanic ash have created an unintentional chemical reaction, a sort of ancient nanotechnology? Excavations uncovered pottery shards stained with similar pigments, but none retain the light-responsive properties. This suggests the murals weren't just painted, they were activated, perhaps through a lost process involving heat, sound, or even biological agents like fermented cactus juice. Infrared scans reveal something stranger. Beneath the visible layer, ghostly underdrawings glow with phosphorescence, as if the walls themselves remember multiple iterations of the same scene. The mural's content deepens the riddle. One vanishing scene shows a procession of figures carrying orbs that glow only under the solstice sunrise, a celestial calendar hidden in plain sight. Another, visible solely by torchlight, depicts a shaman swallowing what appears to be a miniature galaxy, its stars twinkling with embedded quartz. Most haunting is a mural that materializes only during lunar eclipses, revealed fleetingly in red light. A lone figure walking into a spiral, their body dissolving into the same photochromic pigment that makes them appear and vanish. Modern attempts to preserve these murals have backfired tragically. When conservators applied UV-blocking sealants, the pigments darkened permanently, erasing the vanish effect. It's as if the murals resist containment, their secrets meant to exist fleetingly like the civilization that created them. Whether sacred technology or happy accident, one truth lingers: these walls weren't just meant to be seen. They were meant to be witnessed, their messages fleeting as breath on a mirror, leaving us to wonder how much else has faded before we even knew to look. The walls of Huaca de la Musica hum with a silent symphony, rows of figures frozen mid-performance, their fingers dancing across instruments that defy classification. Unlike the familiar panpipes and drums found in Moche tombs, these devices twist into impossible shapes. Flutes with coiled chambers like seashells, harps strung with what appears to be human hair, and percussion instruments resembling hollowed-out skulls fitted with bronze tongues. Most baffling of all are the notations etched above them, swirling glyphs that modern acoustic engineers swear resemble sheet music, yet when translated into sound, produce frequencies that make laboratory animals cower in their cages. Start with the instruments themselves. The serpent flute dominates the mural's center, its sinuous body looping in a double helix impossible to carve from a single piece of wood. A musician blows into what should be the mouthpiece, but the finger holes are spaced too erratically for any known scale. When replicas were crafted based on the mural's proportions, the resulting tones hovered around 17 Hz, a frequency felt in the bones more than heard, known to trigger unease and even hallucinations in humans. Archaeologists discovered something chilling in the temple's foundation: real flutes buried beneath the mural, their designs simplified versions of the painted ones, but still capable of producing subsonic vibrations. Were these practice instruments, or were the mural's impossible designs aspirational, depicting sounds the Moche believed only gods could hear? Then there are the notations. Unlike Western musical staffs or even Inca quipu knots, these glyphs pulse with organic, almost fungal shaped spirals within spirals, their density varying like amplitude waves. A team from Berklee College of Music digitized the patterns in 2019, converting them into MIDI sequences. The result wasn't melody but chaos, glissandos that climbed beyond human hearing, staccato bursts mimicking primate alarm calls, and sustained drones that caused recording equipment to malfunction. The most unsettling discovery came when the sequences were played inside Huaca de la Musica itself. Infrared cameras captured vibrations in the wall's plaster at exact harmonic intervals, suggesting the temple was designed as a giant resonator for these songs. But to what end? The musicians' postures deepen the enigma. Their eyes are rolled back, their mouths slack, not the focused expressions of performers, but the ecstatic trance of shamans mid-vision. One figure's instrument has no strings. His fingers pluck empty air, yet the mural shows sound waves radiating from it in precise concentric circles. Another hugs a drum adorned with the Decapitator God's face, its surface bulging as if struck hard, yet the drumstick hovers inches above the hide. Were these depictions of literal music or metaphors for rituals where sound crossed into the spiritual? Recent excavations uncovered a chamber behind the mural filled with powdered hematite and quartz materials known to vibrate at specific frequencies. When sprinkled onto taut parchment and exposed to the replicated music, the particles arranged into patterns eerily similar to the mural's glyphs. The silence surrounding these findings is almost as loud as the mysteries themselves. No other Moche site contains musical murals, nor do any ceramics or textiles hint at this sonic obsession. The instruments, if they ever existed outside pigment and plaster, left no physical trace. Perhaps the answer lies not in the notes but in the negative space between them, a culture reaching for harmonies just beyond human perception, their songs lingering now only as ghosts in the clay. Stretching across the ruined walls of Huaca del Diluvio, a scene of suffocating horror unfolds. Figures flail in thick, swirling liquid, their mouths agape in silent screams, their limbs contorted as if fighting an unseen current. But this is no ordinary drowning. The liquid defies all logic. It clings to their bodies like tar, its surface shimmering with an unnatural iridescence, neither the familiar blue of water nor the crimson of blood, but a shifting spectrum of oily greens and purples that seem to move even when the light stays still. The drowning scene isn't just art, it's an enigma drowning in its own contradictions. Why would the Moche master hydrologists who carved life from the desert depict water, or something masquerading as it, as an agent of terror? First, the forensic details unsettle. The victims aren't anonymous. Each face is rendered with chilling individuality: wrinkled elders, smooth-cheeked youths, even a child clutched to a woman's chest. Their clothing dissolves in tatters, but their jewelry remains pristine. Gold nose rings still gleaming, spondylus shell necklaces untouched by corrosion. This liquid doesn't behave like any natural element. It curls around wrists in tendrils, invades mouths and nostrils in perfect spheres, as if each droplet has intention. Archaeologists initially assumed this depicted a catastrophic flood, perhaps linked to the El Niño events that periodically ravaged the coast. But the mural's location contradicts this. Huaca del Diluvio sits atop a cliff far beyond any recorded flood line. Then there's the punishment theory. In Moche ceramics, drowning was a fate reserved for the damned sinners dragged into the depths by crab-clawed demons. Yet these figures show no signs of divine wrath. No monsters loom over them, no deities preside. Instead, the liquid itself seems sentient, its surface forming shapes that resolve momentarily into eyes and mouths. Infrared scans revealed something even stranger. Beneath the top layer, earlier sketches showed the victims floating peacefully, their expressions serene. The horror was added later, the pigments mixed with ground malachite and magnetite to create that eerie, moving sheen. Was this a revision of history? A warning painted after some traumatic event erased from collective memory. The most radical theory comes from astrophysics. The mural's liquid bears uncanny resemblance to modern depictions of dark matter, an invisible force that permeates the universe, detectable only by its gravitational pull. The Moche tracked celestial phenomena with uncanny precision. Their priests might have witnessed a supernova or comet impact, interpreting its aftermath as a cosmic deluge. Supporting this, the victims don't gasp for air. Their faces show something subtler disorientation, as if the very fabric of their reality has liquefied around them. One figure reaches toward the surface, but his fingers dissolve into the same substance he's trying to escape. But perhaps the answer whispers from the mural's edges. Where the liquid meets the temple walls, tiny fish swim in perfect detail, species found only in the Amazon, thousands of miles away. Their scales are painted with the same iridescence as the drowning medium, suggesting a connection. Recent excavations uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the mural filled with Amazonian pollen and jaguar bones, evidence of long-distance trade or perhaps migration. Could this scene memorialize a journey gone wrong? A group lost in the rainforest's flooded depths, their fate so haunting it demanded immortalization. The drowning scene refuses to fit neatly into myth or history. Its victims hang suspended between elements, between worlds, their terror preserved not as a cautionary tale but as a question. The Moche understood what modern science confirms. Water gives life, but it also holds secret currents that pull in two directions at once. In this mural, they may have painted the ultimate metaphor that some truths can't be surfaced, only endured. The walls of Huaca del Jugo pulse with a scene that turns the stomach even as it fascinates. A ball game unlike any other, where the players sprint, leap, and strike with terrifying intensity, all while carrying their own severed heads under their arms. These are the headless ball players, their neck stumps dripping blackened streams of blood that pool at their feet, yet their bodies locked in perfect athletic form as they maneuver a heavy ball across a court that defies all known rules of the sacred Mesoamerican game. At first glance, the parallels seem obvious. The ball game was a ritual cornerstone across ancient America, from the Mayas' famed Poctoppoc to the Aztec Ullamalistli, a cosmic metaphor where the ball's movement mirrored the sun's journey through the underworld. But here's where the Moche mural veers into uncharted territory. Mesoamerican courts were long, narrow alleys flanked by sloped walls, designed to keep the ball in play as players struck it with hips or padded forearms. The Moche court, by contrast, is circular, its boundary marked by a spiral of severed hands pressed palm down into the clay. The ball itself isn't solid rubber. It's depicted as a hollow sphere, its surface covered in jagged hooks that snag the player's fingers as they grapple with it. And then there's the decapitation. In Mesoamerica, losing teams might face sacrifice, but the games weren't played headless. The Moche players, however, are frozen mid-action with their heads tucked between their elbows like macabre trophies, their faces eerily calm despite the brutality. Forensic archaeologists made a chilling discovery beneath the mural: the remains of 7 adolescents buried with their skulls placed between their femurs, their vertebrae showing precise cuts suggesting the heads were removed while the victims still lived. Were these actual players honored in death, or was the mural a supernatural vision depicting a game played by spirits in the afterlife? The scoring system deepens the enigma. Mesoamerican games awarded points for getting the ball through stone rings or past boundary markers. Here, the goals are pairs of disembodied jaws mounted on poles, their teeth filed into points. The ball players aim not to score, but to feed, tossing the spiked orb into the jaws' clenching maws in a grotesque parody of nourishment. Some scholars argue this symbolizes the Moche's cyclical view of sacrifice, death sustaining life, blood nourishing the earth. Others note the jaws resemble those of the Decapitator God, suggesting the game was a form of worship where victory meant surrendering to the blade. Yet the most unsettling detail isn't the gore, it's the player's precision. Infrared scans reveal the mural was painted over an earlier, more conventional ballgame scene. The original players had heads, their court was rectangular. Someone deliberately changed the rules, transforming a known ritual into something darker. Were the Moche recording a shift in belief, a catastrophic event that demanded new forms of sacrifice? Or were they depicting a game that wasn't meant for the living at all, a contest played in the underworld where only the headless could compete? The answer might lie in the mural's missing pieces. Fragments of plaster show traces of a spectator gallery filled with shadowy figures, their hands raised not in cheer, but in what could be supplication or terror. Whatever game this was, it wasn't entertainment. It was a negotiation with forces beyond human understanding, where the stakes weren't points but survival itself. The players' headless bodies remind us some contests can't be won, only endured. The warriors of Huaca de los Flores don't bleed, they bloom. Vines burst from their wounds, tendrils curl around their spears, and where their blood should stain the earth, petals unfurl in lurid shades of violet and gold. These are the flowering warriors, their bodies locked in combat while flora devours them from within. An impossible fusion of violence and fertility, painted with such biological precision that botanists have spent decades trying and failing to identify the species swallowing them whole. Start with the plants themselves. Their stems are too thick for desert flora, their leaves serrated like Amazonian bromeliads, yet their flowers resemble no known Andean species. The petals spiral in Fibonacci sequences unknown to indigenous plants, while the roots weave through the warrior's musculature with surgical precision, threading between ribs and femurs as if they'd grown there naturally. Most unsettling is the sap, depicted as a shimmering indigo fluid that beads at the stem's breaks, pooling in the warrior's palms where it mixes with their blood. Chemical analysis of the mural's pigments detected traces of atropine and scopolamine, compounds found in nightshades used for ritual hallucinations. Were these plants symbolic, or were the artists painting visions from trances induced by toxic brews? The warrior's expressions deepen the mystery. Unlike the agony you'd expect from men being consumed by vegetation, their faces hover between ecstasy and serenity. One young fighter cradles a sprouting vine against his cheek like a lover, his eyes rolled back in rapture. Another has allowed his spear arm to be entirely encased in bark, his fingers branching into twigs that still clutch his weapon. This isn't a scene of domination, it's a collaboration, as if the plants and warriors are allies in some unfathomable battle. Then there's the tactical angle. The plants don't hinder the fighters, they enhance them. Vines lash out to entangle enemies, thorns protrude from knuckles like natural brass knuckles, and one warrior's flower-crowned helmet drips nectar that appears to repel attackers. Modern special forces use bioluminescent markers for night ops. Could the Moche have harnessed flora as biological weaponry? Excavations at the site uncovered ceramic flasks containing desiccated plant matter, their DNA unmatched to any living species. But perhaps the answer lies in the mural's deeper metaphor. The Moche saw war and agriculture as two sides of the same blade. Conquest nourished the land just as sacrifice nourished the gods. The flowering warriors might embody this duality, their bodies becoming literal battlefields where life and death intertwined. The plant's unidentifiable nature suggests something even more profound, that the mural doesn't depict this world at all, but a liminal space where the rules of nature dissolve. As dawn light filters into the chamber, the petals seem to quiver, their pigments reacting to the sun's angle like the vanishing murals we saw earlier. For a few minutes each morning, the sap glows cobalt, the leaves rustle in unseen wind, and the warriors' mouths part as if whispering secrets to the roots splitting their skin. Whether drug vision, divine intervention, or lost botanical knowledge, one truth takes root. In the Moche's world, even violence could bear fruit. The walls of Huaca de los Sombras hold a secret that only reveals itself when the sun hits at exactly 17 degrees past noon. Figures so faint they seem breathed onto the plaster rather than painted, their outlines shimmering into existence for mere minutes before fading again. These are the shadow people, their forms lacking the bold colors and sharp edges of other Moche murals, instead rendered in translucent washes of charcoal and ash that blend into the wall until sunlight strikes them at that precise, magical angle. But here's what chills archaeologists. When researchers mapped the temple's architecture against the sun's path, they discovered these shadows shouldn't exist. The figures' elongated silhouettes defy the actual light patterns of the space, stretching in directions no natural shadow could take. The technical mastery is baffling. The pigment blend contains crushed quartz and mica, minerals that refract light unpredictably, creating an optical illusion of depth where none physically exists. Under microscopes, the brushstrokes show an almost pointillist technique, thousands of microdots layered to catch light only under specific conditions. Modern attempts to replicate the effect using period-appropriate materials have failed spectacularly. Whatever binders the Moche mixed into their paints, their formula remains lost. More unsettling still, the shadows don't just appear, they move. As the sun crosses that narrow window, the figures seem to shift positions, a seated man rising to his feet, a child turning its head. Time-lapse photography confirms it's not a trick of the eye. The pigment layers interact with sunlight to create a primitive but undeniable animation. Theories about their purpose spiral in wild directions. Some scholars argue they're a sophisticated calendar designed to mark solar events like equinoxes or the zenith passage. Others point to the figures' poses, hands raised as if in worship or surrender, as evidence of a ritual theater where priests used sunlight to summon ancestral spirits on the walls. The most spine-tingling hypothesis comes from forensic analysis. The silhouette's proportions match those of human remains found buried beneath the mural, their bones bearing cut marks consistent with ritual dismemberment. Were the shadow people painted with ash from their own funeral pyres, their essence literally woven into the walls? Yet the greatest mystery isn't how they were made, but why they were hidden. Unlike every other Moche mural shouting its message in vivid pigments, these figures whisper, their existence meant only for those present at the exact moment the sun's angle unlocks them. Perhaps they weren't art at all, but a warning or an invitation, meant for eyes attuned to the liminal spaces between light and dark, between the living and the gone. As the last sliver of sunlight slips away, the shadow people dissolve once more, leaving only the faintest afterimage burning behind your eyelids. Beneath the sweeping scenes of gods and warriors, almost hidden in the margins of the murals at Huaca de los Números, runs a silent language of dots, bars, and intricate knots, a numerical code etched alongside the art with the same reverence as the figures themselves. These are the counting murals where mathematics and mystery intertwine. The Moche used a base 20 system, counting on fingers and toes, with shells or beans representing units, yet the sequences painted here don't always adhere to logic. Some tally impossibly high into the thousands, while others repeat in loops that defy practical use. Were these records of harvests, celestial cycles, or something far more esoteric? Take the mural at the Temple of the Sun. A procession of priests carries sacks marked with precise counts: 840, 1,600, 3,200. At first glance, it resembles an inventory, perhaps tribute or temple offerings. But here's the twist: excavation records show no evidence of storage chambers large enough to hold such quantities. The numbers escalate geometrically, each doubled from the last, mimicking the growth patterns of cells or constellations. One theory suggests they're symbolic, a representation of infinity or the exponential power of the gods. Another points to the mural's alignment with the Pleiades. When the star cluster's 6 visible stars are multiplied by the Moche's base 20 system, the totals eerily match the painted counts. Then there are the anomalies. At Huaca de la Cuenta, a sequence near a sacrificial scene reads 5, 10, 15, then abruptly jumps to 60 as if skipping steps. The bars and dots are flawless, so it's not an error, it's intentional. Archaeologists found a ceramic tablet nearby with the same sequence alongside tiny notched sticks that could be primitive calculators. The prevailing theory, these were ritual numbers perhaps tied to the lunar-solar calendar discrepancies the Moche struggled to reconcile. Their solar year didn't perfectly match their sacred lunar cycles, creating gaps they might have tracked with these coded leaps. But the most haunting example hides in the Tomb of the Moon. Here, a single column of numbers runs vertically beside a depiction of the Decapitator God. 7, 28, 140, then 560. At first, it reads like random multiples until you realize these are the exact intervals between recorded solar eclipses in the Moche's epoch. Did they predict celestial events with such precision? The number's placement suggests a darker purpose. Each count aligns with a victim's severed head in the mural, as if sacrifices were timed to the cosmos itself. The enigma deepens when you examine the materials. The pigments used for these numerals differ from the rest of the mural's ground magnetite mixed with adhesives that still retain faint magnetic properties. Run a compass near them and the needle twitches. Was this a form of sacred encryption, numbers meant to be felt as much as seen? Or did the Moche believe mathematics held a physical force, a way to commune with the invisible currents of the world? What's undeniable is the scale of their obsession. At the remote outpost of Huaca de los Hilos, a mural spans an entire wall with nothing but numbers, rows upon rows of them, some crossed out, others corrected, as if scribes were working out equations too vast or terrible to name. The highest legible count reaches 28,800, a figure with no obvious practical application. Yet in the adjacent chamber, archaeologists uncovered a cache of knotted cords protoquippus dyed in the same vibrant ochres as the mural. The knots correspond to the painted numbers, but with subtle variations, as if translating between systems. Were these early experiments with the record keeping the Inca would later perfect? Or did the Moche use numbers not just to measure but to speak to something beyond human understanding? The counting murals refuse to be pinned down. They're at once ledger and liturgy, their sequences oscillating between the mundane and the divine. Perhaps that's the point. For the Moche, numbers weren't just tools. They were the hidden architecture of reality, the silent language in which gods whispered their demands. And in these fading pigments, that language still waits to be deciphered, not just by scholars, but by anyone willing to listen. At Huaca Rajada, where the tombs of Moche royalty once glittered with gold, the final mural whispers an unsettling farewell. An ornate throne, carved with serpents and stars, sits empty under a sky painted the color of dried blood. No ruler occupies it, no attendants kneel before it. The only movement comes from the dust motes swirling in the light that filters through the cracked temple roof, as if time itself is settling over this abandoned seat of power. Discovered in the deepest chamber, sealed behind a collapsed corridor, this mural is the last known artwork the Moche ever created, and it begs the question, was this an elegy for a dying civilization or a prophecy no one heeded? The throne's details are exquisite but haunting. Its high back is inlaid with spondylus shells arranged in constellations, the Pleiades, Orion's belt, celestial markers the Moche used to time planting and warfare. Yet here, the stars are inverted, their patterns reversed as though viewed through a dark mirror. The armrests twist into the shapes of the Decapitator God's blades, their edges notched from imagined use. Most chilling is the seat itself, worn smooth in the center, as if someone had just risen from it, but the pigments there are fresher than the rest of the mural. Scientific dating confirms it. The throne was repainted again and again over decades, each layer thinner than the last, until the final stroke was little more than a ghostly outline. 3 prevailing theories attempt to explain this eerie vacancy. The first hinges on royal succession, or the lack thereof. Excavations at Huaca Cao revealed an unfinished tomb adjacent to the mural, its shaft dug but never filled. Had a ruler died without an heir, leaving the throne literally and spiritually empty? The mural's position supports this. It faces the rising sun on the winter solstice, a date associated with Moche coronations. But there's no celebration here, just silence. The second theory whispers of abandonment prophecies. Spanish chronicles recorded an Andean legend about rulers who foresaw their civilizations collapse and walked into the sea to bargain with the gods. The mural's backdrop shows a tidal wave cresting on the horizon, its foam rendered in ground mother of pearl that still glimmers in low light. But this isn't the wrathful ocean of other Moche art. It's eerily still, as if frozen mid-cataclysm. Had priests painted their own doom, then watched it unfold, then there's the most unsettling interpretation, that the throne was never meant to be filled. Infrared scans revealed a charcoal sketch beneath the paint, a figure seated on the throne, but with elongated limbs and hollow eyes, more skeleton than man. Was this a depiction of death itself claiming the Moche's final ruler, or a warning that power, in the end, belongs to no one? A single clue lingers in the pigment. The throne's base is stained with handprints, dozens of them, palms pressed flat as if trying to hold the structure steady. Some are adult-sized, others no bigger than a child's. The prints overlap in chaotic layers, their edges smudged with what chemists identified as fermented corn beer mixed with ash, a final offering, a desperate plea. The answer may lie in the mural's most overlooked detail. Carved into the throne's footrest is a tiny, perfect maize plant, its roots coiled around a human tooth. Life and death, growth and decay, the Moche's world distilled into a single, silent symbol. As the last light fades from Huaca Cao's walls, the empty throne seems to lean forward, its shadows lengthening across the centuries. It doesn't ask for answers, it simply waits for a ruler who will never return, or perhaps for us to finally understand what true endings look like. These 30 murals don't just decorate walls, they whisper secrets from a civilization that mastered art, war, and ritual, yet left no written language to explain themselves. From the Decapitator God's gravity defying blood to the flowering warriors consumed by impossible botany, each mural forces us to confront how little we truly understand. The Moche painted with scientific precision, mapping celestial events, encoding mathematical truths, even engineering pigments that vanish and reappear like ghosts, yet their worldviews feel alien, untranslatable. Why depict warriors carrying severed heads one moment and crab-human hybrids the next? Were they recording reality, hallucinating visions, or bridging realms we've forgotten exist? Take the contradictions, a civilization that irrigated deserts with canals of geometric perfection, yet believed mirrors could open portals to the dead. A people who rendered owl feathers and serpent scales with near photorealistic detail, yet painted ladders to nowhere and rivers that flowed upside down. Even their numbers defy logic, counts too vast for practical use, etched beside sacrificial scenes as if mathematics itself was a form of prayer. The deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. The Moche didn't just live in their world. They navigated layers of it where the cosmic and the corporal bled together, where a priestess's belt of living snakes was as factual as the temple's adobe bricks. And then the silence, the empty throne at Huaca Cao, repainted thinner and thinner until it was barely a whisper. The vanishing murals that dissolve unless struck by light at exact angles, as if their messages were never meant for permanence. The shadow people who exist only when the sun hesitates at 17 degrees past noon. These aren't just artistic choices, they're deliberate. The Moche shape time and perception with their pigments, leaving clues that feel less like history and more like a puzzle box meant to be solved, or perhaps never solved at all. So where does that leave us, with more questions than answers? Did the spider divinity's unnatural web encode star maps or trap souls? Were the floating figures shamans mid-trance or witnesses to anti-gravity we still can't explain? And that blood-drinking ceremony, literal or symbolic? Forensic science confirms the cups held hemoglobin, but the mural's swirling patterns suggest something beyond mere sacrifice. Every breakthrough peels back another layer, revealing not clarity but deeper mystery. Perhaps the most humbling truth is this: some doors open only once. When the last Moche artist laid down their brush, they took with them the keys to decoding their world. We're left with fragments, painted prophecies, mathematical spells, and gods who stare back at us with eyes that still gleam after 1,000 years. The murals aren't just art, they're a challenge, a dare to keep looking, keep questioning, even when the answers slip through our fingers like desert sand. What do you think? Are we closer to understanding the Moche, or have we only scratched the surface? Drop your wildest theories below, maybe together we'll unravel a thread or two. And if you're hungry for more ancient enigmas, hit subscribe. The past isn't done talking.